Hello, this is Jim, and I am recording this for the camp out. And I hope that y'all are having a good time, good food, and don't get burned by the fire. Remember, don't shake those marshmallows because when they fly away, they hit you, it could really hurt somebody. So don't shake the marshmallows. That's rule number one. But Jake asked me to send you a story about the stars because I used to tell these stories years ago, and Jake would listen, and he doesn't remember them, which I'm surprised. They'll come back to him, though. But the first story has to do with the northern sky in this time of year, and it's sort of near the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, but it's to the right or to the east and up in the sky, pretty high, and it has to do with several constellations. You know, constellations are just groups of stars, and they used to make up stories about these constellations so they can pass the stories from one generation to the next because they didn't have books. They didn't have iPhones. Anyway, this is a story about Andromeda. And Andromeda was the daughter of Cepheus and Cassiopeia. And Cassiopeia, or Cassiopeia, people pronounce it differently, is a giant M in the sky, and it's pretty easy to find. And Cepheus is a little square with a triangle head because he has a crown on because he's the king. And this king, Cepheus and Cassiopeia, they were so cocky and arrogant back in those days, and it really made the gods mad. You know, back then they had gods for everything. They had a god for water, and they had a god for fish, and they had a god for the land, and a god for mountains, and a god for love. And well, today they'd probably have, a god for computers and a god for cars. But that ended a long time ago. But anyway, in those days, they would tell these stories about these gods and the things they would do to humans because they ruled over the humans. And this king, Cepheus, and his wife, Cassiopeia, they were so arrogant, and they were, rightfully so, they were king and queen, so they had a right to be a little bit cocky about their situation. But they had a daughter, Andromeda. And Andromeda was, in her late teens, probably 13, 14, something like that. And she was very, very pretty. And the mother, Cassiopeia, started bragging to people about how pretty she was. And it was part of her arrogance, and everything was going along fine, except one day she said, "My daughter is more beautiful than all the sea nymphs in the ocean." Now, the sea nymphs were sort of like mermaids. They were beautiful, beautiful figures in the water. And to do that was a big insult to the gods. Now, the god of the water, of the ocean, was Poseidon. And this really irritated Poseidon. And so Poseidon decided to punish him. So he sent a storm to the coast of their land. Now, it was called Ethiopia, but it wasn't really the Ethiopia we know today in Africa. But he started a storm there, and he sent these giant fish, Cetus was one of them, and he's in the sky up there with them. He started eating people in the ocean, that kind of stuff, and it was a bad scene. And so Cepheus went to a person to sort of tell the future and sort of find out what to do. And they said, well, you know what, Cepheus, you need to do, because your daughter is the crux of all this problem, because your wife said she was the most beautiful than more the sea nymphs. You need to sacrifice your daughter to the ocean. Cepheus didn't want to do it, and Cassiopeia didn't want to do it. But he knew that in order to save his country, he had to do it. So he rowed out in a boat with the daughter Andromeda, and he chained her to a giant rock. And he put chains around her feet and around her hands, and he chained her there. And then he rowed back in to the shore. And, of course, you could imagine, the daughter, she's just a young kid, that, well, what are you doing? You're going to get me killed. And, of course, Poseidon was elated by this. And so he sent the fish Cetus out there to get Andromeda. She's chained on her long, blonde, flowing hair. Well, it just so happened at the same time, another god came by, and his name was Perseus. And he was riding the winged horse. And he was riding over this island, and he looked down, and he saw that blonde hair. And he swooped down, and he instantly fell in love. And he swooped her up right before the fish was about to eat her. He swooped her up and took her into the sky. And sure enough, they fell in love, and they got married. Now, this really irritated Poseidon. He was so mad about that. And so what he did was, he came to earth, came and stood in front of Cepheus and Andromeda and Perseus and Cassiopeia. And however they did it, with magic or whatever, poof, he made them stars in the sky. And he put them up over the sky during our hurricane season because he wants to remind us that he still has the power over the sea and that we should do as he says, or we too could end up as stars. That's it.